Hey guys, this is Ross with Hamel Bros Studios, and this tutorial today is going to run a little longer than you're used to. Probably it's going to be 20-30 minutes, but hopefully it's going to save you hours upon hours. So what is a tutorial about? Well, it is, and I may be committing a cardinal sin here, but by the end of this you'll understand why. But this is, if you're using the Adobe Suite, you're using Premiere for your editing and Audition for your audio, why I do 90%, if not more, of my audio editing within Premiere. This will save you a ton of time, it will save you a ton of headaches, and it will protect your original files, which is the most important thing. So let's dive in. I just came off of post audio on a feature film and wanted to share some things that I learned. And this really, I wish this was more universal, but this is pretty much limited to the Adobe Suite and the way it operates. So basically, I'm going to go through why I choose to do most of my editing in Premiere before I take things into Audition, and how I manage to clean up my dialogue, whether I'm doing the edit or somebody else is. I know that I'm going to end up with my clean dialogue in the edit without having to send extra files or getting things confused. So let's dive on in. So the first thing I want to address, I know there's, somebody's going to have an opinion about this, but why do I use Premiere? Premiere is not really an audio program. And yes, I totally 100% agree, but there are some advantages. And the first being, I do not like that if you drag a file into Audition directly, and if that file matches your sequence settings or your multi-track settings, so let's say your sound effect is 48K at 24-bit, if you drag that in, it doesn't make a copy. So if you get into your film and you decide you need to do something to that sound effect, and you forget to right-click and create a unique copy or something like that, it will overwrite your old file, and you just lost your original copy of that sound effect. So when I'm doing my sound effects placement, I do 90%, if not more, in Premiere, because once all of that's placed and we click edit in Adobe Audition sequence, it's going to take all of my sound effects and create new copies of them within my project folder, or wherever I tell it to, but normally it's within my project folder. And I don't have to worry about destroying the original copies of my sound effects. So that's very helpful. Now, the downside to this, which is, yes, it is a downside, and no, it's not, because it has its ups and its downs, are if I am editing all of my dialogue in Premiere, doing most of that editing, it's also going to take every single edit of every single clip and generate a new file for it. So that's not a problem, except when it comes to cleaning up your dialogue. If I've got, let's say, this clip here, and it's, there's 4 or 5 instances of this same audio clip, it's got the same noise print, it's got the same reverb, I could just clean this one file. Well, if I send it over to Audition, if this clip's used 7 times, it's going to make 7 copies, and then I'll have to do a batch denoise, a batch of reverb, and all that stuff in RX, which is my preferred dialogue cleanup tool. And it's a pain when I could do just one clip and knock it all out. So how do we circumvent this? And I just figured this out on this feature. So first problem we run into is, how do we know once one of these is cleaned that every instance, how do we know where all the instances are? So what I'm going to do is, we've got all of these, and you see they're all the same color. Now, I've started working, I'm sure I didn't create the system, but watching an effects PhD from Gareth Edwards, the guy who did Rogue One and Godzilla. When he's doing his visual effects, any clips that haven't been touched, he turns them yellow, and I can't remember if he turns them green after they're done, but that's what I'm going to do. If they're yellow, they're not done. If they're green, they're done. So if I take this clip and change the label to yellow, great, it's yellow. But I know this clip is used more than one time. So just gonna take that back to, was it Caribbean, I think is the default. Yeah. And so we're gonna go into our project settings here, go to General. We're gonna display project item name and label color for all instances. And I've done this before, so you see that it turned them all yellow. But if we do, let's just, for the sake of example, let's say we want to change that to magenta. You gotta, it has to reload the sequence. It doesn't refresh, but as you see, when I moved the mouse around, it changed all of the instances of this one clip to magenta. To further prove my point, let's do it again on this one and call this one Cerulean. And I'm just going to use the minus key and the plus key to scroll around. Let's see if there's any other instances of this clip. There may not be. Yeah, that seems about right. So let's do this one, label. Let's go tan. And as you can see, all of these over here have turned tan as well because those are instances of the same clip. So I'm just going to zoom back out, hit my backslash. I'm going to highlight all of these, right click, label, and I'm going to change them to yellow so that I know that they need to be, something needs to be done with them. So the next thing we have to do is, and this is sadly specific to Windows, but we have to set up our default audio program. And I've already got mine set to RX, but what we're going to do is we're going to right click and look for open with. I think that's what we're going to look for. Open, open, open. Not helpful, so I'm going to shift and right click. Open with, right there. And Isotope RX Audio Editor is available as an option. I've already set that as my default, but if you're on Windows and you don't have that set up, you just go to choose another app. Normally it's not listed here under your other options, so you have to click on more apps, scroll down, look for another app on this PC. It's going to be in your program files. I'm sorry, it's Program 86. Program 86, scroll till you get to Isotope RX Audio Editor, and I use the Win64 version. And that's where you'll select that. And now it's open to that. Now when we go into Premiere, this gives us the option to right click and click Edit Original. It's going to open up our file. So there's already a flaw here, but we're going to work around it. So basically we know that we don't want to edit any of this audio directly because this is all of our raw files. Yes, I've got backups, but I don't want to have to mess with my backups. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go into File, Project Manager. Got the LTL picture lock. Collect and copy files to a new location. Now, I did run into an issue a little bit ago where the file name was too long, which is stupid, but whatever. So I'm going to browse, and I'm just going to go down to my G Drive A, Hamel Bros Portable. We'll call this Dialogue Tutorial. I'm going to select that folder, and I'm going to exclude unused clips, include audio conform files is fine, preview files is fine, rename media files to match clip names. I'm not going to do that because I want to know what my audio files are. And calculate 10 gigs, not bad. So I'm going to click OK, and we're going to fast forward while this collects all the files. Okay, so we are back. And that has created a new project for us. And so what we're going to do, if this will allow me, I'm going to right click. We're going to rename. And it's not letting me rename this. I don't know why. It's not set up to I don't know. Anyway, normally what I would do is I would rename this project or this sequence to, whatever its name is, and then I would just go _ do not touch. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to import, and we're just going to go, let's see, Homebrew Studios Dialog Tutorial, and this copied file right here, this is going to be everything that's in this sequence here. And I'm going to, right there, that's what we want. So I'm just going to import this Premiere project, import selected sequences, sure, create folder for imported items, most definitely, and allow importing duplicate media, because that is going to completely undo what we were just backing up. So we're going to do that. And it's got to think for a minute, even though this task should be simple. It takes a bit, but hopefully one day they will get that worked out. But while we wait, I'm just going to, I was going to tell you a joke, but I'm not now since this is working. And this is the first time I'm using Premiere 2020. So I'm having to give it permissions, all that stuff. So we see this here, picture log. So we're just going to go OK. And it's got this. This folder is named the exact same thing as our original folder, so we do want to change this name. Hopefully it will let us, and it's not letting us, so that's a problem. I'm going to close Premiere and see if maybe it just needs to be reopened. So stand by while I restart the program. Okay, so we've got Premiere open back up now. Let's see if we can commence as we were. There we go. Okay. See, sometimes restarting is all you need. So I'm just going to _ do not touch. So this is our picture lock. This is our master sequence. We do not want to screw this thing up. So we're going to import, and it takes us right back where we were. I'm going to go ahead and open that. Import selected sequences. Just got to think through the dynamic link a little bit. And, on a short film, this doesn't seem like a huge deal, but when you're doing a feature film, I'm going to go ahead and select this. When you're doing a feature film, the number of dialogue tracks or clips alone was somewhere around, I think, 195. But it was upwards of 200 audio files, not to mention every single one of those was at least stereo or had up to 4 tracks of audio on it. So we're just going to call this a good dame for a sandwich, which brings up a good time to pitch this short film we just finished up for the Aperture Light This Location. Film's called A Good Dame for a Sandwich, and that is We barely missed. We almost made it into the North American region, but it was a close call, but we learned a lot. Audio edit. Okay, so I've renamed this, and we know that this is our dialogue, or our audio editing timeline. And what we're going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and reveal this clip in Explorers just to prove the point that, yes, it is referencing out of this singular folder where all of our media was copied. And I wish there was some way to at least manage the media in folders outside of this, but there's not. That's fine because it's all managed within Premiere. But now what we're going to do, since we know that all of these are backup copies of the audio, go in, edit original, and what that's going to do, since we set up our default audio program earlier, it's going to open up RX for us, which is fantastic. And I'm going to go over here. I know this is a pretty good noise print. This was voiceover stuff that we recorded down in our studio. Just going to go to voice denoise. I know there's not really going to be there's not going to really be any reverb to it. So we learn, we render, running voice denoise. And as you can see, they did a pretty good job cleaning it up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to click Save, and that's going to overwrite the file that is getting referenced here in Premiere. And as you see, it has to regenerate the waveform, which is totally fine. And I'm going to right-click this, label green. And now, every instance of this clip, assuming there's more than one instance right there, now it's green. I know that this dialogue has been cleaned. So I'm going to just do this a couple more times. I'm not going to go through the whole film. And it's actually a pretty quiet dialogue or voiceover bit. So let's just scroll over a little bit and get a good noise print. And I normally take better care when doing dialogue denoising, but this is just for the sake of example on how to get through this process. I'll just go ahead and run this. I'm going to save it. I can close that and Alt-Tab back into Premiere. It's going to clear out the... It may not. It may have already reset this. Reset the waveform. I can go ahead and set that to green. And the Premiere doesn't refresh immediately, so sometimes it takes it a second for all of the instances of a clip to change label color. But as you can see, most of my voiceover stuff is done. And it's the same thing with dialogue. If I go in here, edit original, it opens it up here. We can get that, learn, render, and I know there's a ton of reverb in these clips because it was a huge room. I'm going to click save, close, and go back over. It resets the waveform because it knows that a change was made. Label green, and it seems a bit time consuming, but you do this for every clip, and on the feature, it was super helpful because there would be a scene where this same clip's getting used, 10, 15 times, but it's edited down to where I don't want to go through and clean each individual instance of this clip. So once you get through all that, your dialogue is all cleaned and it's all green. Then from there, I'll go ahead and on the feature, I actually had to just create an Audition project just for dialogue. I had 54 tracks of dialogue on this feature, and I knew there was no way I could do anything beyond that by itself. So I, edit Adobe Audition, sequence, and it'll copy everything over. If you don't know how to do this, I would suggest getting Cinema Sound and signing up and learn how all of this dynamic linking and such works. It's super, super helpful. But with this technique of getting all your dialogue edited in Premiere, at the very least, you can get all of your dialogue clean before you go into Audition and, triple, quadruple your work. And it makes things a lot simpler. So, again, this is Ross with Hamel Bros Studios, and I appreciate you taking the time, and good luck with your endeavors.